Welcome. My name is Damon Brown. You're watching Bring It Worth TV. I'm entrepreneurial coach. I help you as a side hustler, as a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Excuse me. And you're watching Bring It Worth TV every Wednesday or most Wednesdays. We're kind of on the holiday schedule right now at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free below. And it's about 400 episodes. Just had our 400th episode a couple weeks ago. Thank you for celebrating with me. Coming on 4 years, which is amazing. You can also get my book, The Complete Bring Your Worth Collection, which is, there we go. The Complete Bring Your Worth Collection is available now, which is crazy. The complete almost complete collection of my business books. Some of y'all some of them have become bestsellers. Thanks so much for that love and support. This is what's happening with that. And it's super cool to have it available now. If you want to go ahead and listen to it, then we can go from there with the link below. Sorry, my equipment's fighting against me today. It's available wherever fine books are sold. You can also catch it at damonbrown.net. And you can catch, believe it or not, you might be watching this on Twitch. Your boy is expanding out. Twitch.tv is a platform that's been available for a while. I used to live in Silicon Valley. I remember when it was called Justin TV. These gray hairs are here for a reason. And then it evolved into Twitch. There's a lot of gaming and other things that happen on there, but it's also a lot of live streaming. And so I want to expand a little bit. I know some of you are out there. If you've been around and hanging out and reading my books for a while, you know I used to cover the gaming community. Shout out to all my gamers out there. I'm not as hardcore as I used to be, but I still get around a little bit, particularly with now I have my two sons. So I'm getting back into gaming more for their younger generation. Anyway, you can catch me out over at Twitch TV. We'll also be live streaming over there. The recorded episodes, my edited episodes, will only be on certain platforms, but Twitch TV is really known for the streaming. If you already have an account on Twitch, feel free to check me out over there, see what's happening. Or you can follow me and you'll get a little notification what's happening over there. But shout out to all my Twitch folks over there. If you get my newsletter, which I'll throw a link up in a second, it's available at joindamon.me. You know that I'm super hyped about the Institute for Independent Journalists uh, conference that's happening at the very end of February. I believe it's the 27th and the 28th. The founder of it, Catherine Lewis, is amazing. I've been a colleague and a friend of hers for a long time, probably a decade and a half or something like that. Probably back when I was on the board of the American Society of Journalists and Authors. Shout out to them as well. They have a conference coming up in the spring, I believe, as well. This is an amazing nonprofit IIJ. It's focused on independent journalists. To break it down to you really quickly, there are journalists who work within, say, newspaper organizations, or they work within a magazine, or, as y'all know, there's the websites and the online things and all that stuff. They all have a place. Those are usually the places that have organizations that represent them. IIJ is the Institute for Independent Journalists. I've been an independent journalist for a long time. Back when newspapers were still hot stuff. And Catherine's new nonprofit, I think it started probably like officially 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago, represents us independent journalists, which is a whole different thing. You got to get your own health insurance. You got to know how to pay your taxes, or the America in particular will remind you if you're not paying your taxes right. You have to hustle for your next thing. You have to build security because there's no one giving you a steady paycheck. So there are insights and challenges and things that are very unique to our line of business. Now, I'm a business coach, as I talked about at the top of the show. I've done my startups. I have this show. There's a lot of things that I do behind the scenes, ghostwriting, and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm independent. And so all those pieces together allow me to take care of me and my family, pay for my place, and all those different things. But this is after me being in the game for so many X number of decades. We'll leave it at that. IIJ is something that I wish was around when I had started back, let's say, at the beginning of the millennium, when I really got serious about the work that I'm doing. This conference is fantastic. I actually spoke at the conference. I think I supported the conference last year, and then, with some of that Q and A's afterwards. I had some part in that a year ago, and I think the year before that, I think I actually spoke at the conference. But I've been involved behind the scenes with the conference, not this one, but in general with the conference, and I couldn't be more happy to support them. They reached out. I was like, "How can I support? What do you guys need?" And they said the best thing I could do for them is actually let y'all know that the conference was happening, because a lot of y'all that I coach, as well as a lot of y'all that are into this channel, are also independent freelance content creators or journalists, depending on what language you want to use. I'm more old school, so I'm going to say freelance journalists. Go ahead and get involved with this conference. Um, it's not very expensive. It is. I think they have an in-person component, but a majority, if not all of it's going to be available online, like in real time, not after the fact, where you're not getting the scraps if if you're doing it online. Um, I have a special link right there. Sorry, it's all mashed up. It was a long link, but it is available in there in the chat. And then, of course, if you're watching the replay, particularly if you're watching a replay on YouTube or on LinkedIn, the link will be in there as well. And actually, I have a special code that they gave me for discount that'll give you, I forgot what discount, but it's already a very affordable conference. Put this into your budget for next year. What is it, December 18th, as we're connecting today? This is going to happen in February. Just bake it into your budget. We're going to talk about that with the topic of today's show as well. This is one of those things that you could bake in. Highly, highly recommend you get involved in it if this is your thing. If you missed the show that we had, I think it was right before Thanksgiving. My days are all getting mixed up. My kids are having half days and everything kind of mixed up. If you can relate to me, feel free to throw it in the chat. But it's all mixed up. All I know is that a couple weeks ago I connected with y'all and we talked about on the 400th episode. I still can't believe it. 400 times of me connecting with y'all. How to let go of perfectionism. I'm very proud and really happy with the conversations we had during this episode. Um, I deal with perfectionism a little bit, but a lot of people that I care about and a lot of people that I support, such as folks like yourself, really struggle with perfectionism. So I think it was four different things that we talked about as far as how to curb perfectionism and frankly how to live with it. To quote one person I care about, they're a recovering perfectionist, and so it's something that you don't necessarily quite get over. It's one of those things where you have to keep an eye out for it. And with all of those things, I talked about it during the episode. So if you want to hear about my stuff, I talked about it during the episode too. We all have our particular Achilles heel, and when we think about Achilles heel, particularly if you know the mythology behind it. I'm a big Greek mythology nerd. Um, if you know the mythology behind it, it's like it's never healed. It's just something that Achilles needs to protect. And Achilles, the strongest human at that time, the strongest human to ever live, the most powerful at least next to Hercules, or Heracles as he used to call it. But he always had this vulnerable part on his ankle. Kind of how it works. Perfectionism is like that. We talk about ways how to deal with that. Be sure and go back if you happen to miss the episode. Whenever we did the live episode, I want to say it was the week before Thanksgiving here in the States. I can't remember, but it was really good connecting with y'all for the episode. You can watch the replay. It's about an hour long. Hopefully, y'all enjoy it. Today's show, my friends, how to rest without guilt in 2025. This is really important for a few different reasons, and we'll go deeper into that with the three different segments that we have with today's show. The big reason, though, let's just pick one. The big reason is that we can't function without stopping. That's not how humans are built. So, I don't know any aliens that I know of. That's probably not how they're built. That's not how nature's built. That's why we have the cycles. We're going to have the winter solstice on this Saturday, which is the anniversary of the show. So it'll be 4 years on Saturday. And the reason why we have that is that there's certain cycles in nature. We can be so focused on getting things done, on getting another thing off the checklist, on building into this as many of us have talked about, late stage capitalism, that if we don't actually if we don't actually carve out time to rest, the things are just going to keep grinding, and we're going to get grinded with it. We're not in the era, and maybe it was a few eras that I can think of in history, but we're not in the era of history where there's going to be built in, at least here in America, there's going to be built in breaks. There's going to be built in stoppage, a moment where you're going to be able to say, oh, okay, this is, and even with like the holidays and all that, I literally have to tell some folks where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be on limited schedule because the the main holidays that we have here in the states that are celebrated, as far as like mainstream government mandated, we'll put it like that. We'll put it government mandated because even in my own family, there's so many different holidays. But that's another. I digress. Christmas happens to fall in exactly a week from now, in the middle of the week. So I had to block on my schedule and be like, hey, you know, nope, that has to be a defensive maneuver. Not in a bad way, just this is kind of what it is. In fact, I would say it's somewhat in a bad way, but that's something that we just need to do. As we go into the new year, and there's been so much, again, as I talk about in the States, but also, we got stuff going on in Gaza, stuff going on in the Ukraine, stuff going on in Sudan, stuff going on in Syria. Like, I can just keep going. There's so much tension. We need to find a way, a moment, carve out a moment to recalibrate ourselves, to mourn what has been lost, to mourn perhaps what will be lost in the near future. And to do that, we need to heal some of the stuff and again literally mourn, physically mourn the stuff that did not work out the way that we would like it from a humanity standpoint, from a personal standpoint, but also to fortify ourselves and ground ourselves for whatever might be coming next. Not in a foreboding state of mind, but more like what are ways we can fortify ourselves right now so that we can appreciate the highs next year and also be able to survive the lows for ourselves and the people that we care about. Rest is part of that. It's really simple. Right before I got on here, which you might be able to tell from my voice, not only do I have some allergy issues, but also I took a nice nap. I had to carve that out. There's work that needs to be done, especially at the end of the year. And it's like, but I need to stop. So I stopped. And there's a level of clarity and energy that hopefully I'm able to bring y'all that I probably would not be able to bring if I didn't stop. So today we're going to talk about 3 different ways you can go and prepare to make sure that you get your rest in 2025 as much as possible. I got 2 little kids. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I get it if it's hard to carve out that time, but there are ways to do it. And so I'm in the arena with you. Let's get into it and talk about those ways. Today's conversation is sponsored, get the words out of my mouth, sponsored by Shortform. It's the ultimate book reader companion. I've been partnering with Shortform for a lot of this year, so they've been a primary partner. I appreciate y'all over there. Shortform is cool for a couple of different reasons. One reason I appreciate them, let's put it on the stage, there we go. One reason I appreciate them is number one, let's put on Discovery, there we go. And see the books I've been reading lately or looking at again. One is for books that you want to learn more about and you want to see if you want to go deeper, like for research and things like that. The second way is it's a book that you really care about. The books on my shelf fall into that category. There's only a fraction of the books I own, but these are the books that I really care about. And you want to go deeper with those books in ways you are not able to do with just reading the book. The first example, again, my guy, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power. And I remember doing an episode at the top of I think it was the top of this year, whenever I started checking out short form. And 48 Laws of Power is a massive book. It's probably as wide as my hand. It's a really big book, even the paperback version. And there's 48 laws, obviously. and it's pretty dense. Love the book, one of my favorites. Even the audiobook is like 10 hours. Remember going on a road trip and I listened to it. I was able to listen to like half of it. Like just massive. So if I needed a particular, in this case, I needed a particular law, and I was like, what was the law about? Keep it to yourself, but not too much. And then within seconds, I was like, oh, don't isolate yourself. That's the law. And then what it did is it broke down the law, which is usually the laws are about 30 words, as you can tell. The principles, breaking down those principles, because Robert Greene, shout to wherever you are. I hope you're doing well. He's a master storyteller. So he's telling these stories from all throughout time, back to again, back to the Greek and Roman mythology. That seems to be the theme on my mind. Talking about and then even talking about Plato and stuff, all the way to you know P.T. Barnum a century and a half ago, to as recently I think you might have mentioned Steve Jobs in the book, like all these different examples about using this power. And then here we're talking about Louis the 14th, the famous king with the Palace of Versailles. So breaking it down. And so when I did the episode, which I have to dig up the episode, but when I did the episode for y'all, where I was talking about this particular law of power, then I had it right here versus having to dig through the book. The second example of this, which is always fantastic for me, and that's really, if it was a thing I was really into, is going deeper into books I already know or want to go deeper in and figure out everything that's connected to it. And we'll do this live here. So let's say Elizabeth Gilbert, who has a fantastic TED Talk. And here we have Big Magic, Eat, Pray, Love. But then we also have books that are related to her fantastic book. My personal favorite is Big Magic. But then there's The Creative Act, which I have on my shelf right behind my big head by Rick Rubin. That just came out, I want to say like a year ago, March before last. Big Magic came out, I don't know, a decade ago, a long time ago. I think my kids were just born when it came out, and they were like 11 and 8. So, I remember seeing her speak at TED. So then there's the new stuff over here. Then it's The Artist Way, which if you guys are old school like me, it's Julia Cameron. I think I got it from a used bookstore ages ago. I need to reread it, by the way, because I haven't read it in ages. It has to be, shoot, it might be as old as I am. Like it's classic, old school. So you have those, but then you have conversations, podcasts. Elizabeth Gilbert on what's his name, Lewis Howe, as well as classic with the Tim Ferriss show, which I probably listened to back in the day. And so you have podcasts. I get the word out of my mouth. Podcasts related to it, and then you also have articles related to it. So you might have uh, um, Wall Street Journal article or HBR, um, a Harvard Business Review article that's available on it. They're all linked up in here. It's a fantastic resource. So if you're researching certain books and you're curious about it, you can learn more about the book here, purchase it directly in the app if you want to go ahead and buy it. Or if it's a book that you're already familiar with, like, I know Big Magic pretty intimately. I listen to it, except the audiobook. I listen to it like probably every other year. I'm actually passed through to listen to it now. And then it's like, oh, well, there's all these other podcasts and all these other articles that are related to Big Magic, so I can go deeper into that. Fantastic opportunity. I know for this year and me working with them, they have a special deal that they're doing for viewers like yourself at bringyourworth.tv, where they're giving a free trial. And I forget how long the trial is, but it's a nice long trial. Free trial, no commitment. Go and check into that. And if you are interested, you're getting 20% off right now. I don't know if that's going to change in the new year, but you should get on it. And it's a great opportunity, even if you're still doing the gift giving, depending on whatever holiday you happen to be into. Most of us are giving some type of gift in the next couple of weeks. This is a great opportunity for the book lover, research lover that you're into. Again, shout out to Short Form for sponsoring. All right, so let's get into it. How to rest without guilt in this year. Number one thing you want to do, you want to use systems to rest. you want to use systems for rest. Many times we talk about the systems that force us to keep going, whether it's late stage capitalism, whether it's inflation, whether it's um, the expectation of others to keep going. If your boss, if your boss's boss isn't taking a break, that means your boss isn't going to be able to take a break. If your boss isn't going to be taking a break, you sure as hell will have a hard time taking a break. So it kind of trickles down from there. What we often don't see, though, is that we can do the reverse and use that system to our advantage. A good, a good example is right now. Both Christmas and New Year's fall in the middle of the week here in the United States. Literally fall on Wednesday, right in the middle. I'm I'm hanging out with you on Wednesday the 18th, exactly a week from now. Christmas, exactly a week after that, New Year's Day. I'm sorry, it's not New Year's, it's New Year's Day. What we can do then is actually, particularly if you're independent, to use that time to recalibrate. This might sound obvious, but it's important to state this. You have these times off for a reason. The advantage of being an independent creator, independent artist, independent entrepreneur, business person, or coach like myself, the beauty of it is it could be a random Wednesday at 10 a.m. and I don't have any clients. My kids are in school or otherwise occupied, and I can go to the grocery store. I can go get an oil change. I can do a midday meditation. The other side of that is that it could be 11 o'clock at night. I could have my kids to bed. Everyone could be resting, and I could be up editing videos for the show. I could be researching my next keynote. I could be putting in finishing touches on something that I'm ghostwriting. The challenge with us being independent is that we can always be on. Yes, there's times when we can be off. I had a personal appointment this morning, and I just took an hour this morning to get it done, which is great. But that means we can be on all the time too. We forget that. It's almost like a Workaholics Anonymous. Uh, I've informally created with the fellow freelancers and independents over the years that I've become friends with. It's like, what are you doing? Oh yeah, I gotta take my kid to this particular thing today. So yeah, I'll be up working late tonight. Oh, you're gonna get some dinner? Yeah, I'm just gonna eat it at my desk. You know, it's not too much different than the cubicle culture in that we often joke about now that was popular in the 80s. You just bring your lunch to your desk and you just eat at your cubicle because you have to get this work done. The difference with cubicle culture, of course, is that usually you punch out literally with the card. You punch out at 5, you punch out at 6. There were no major there was no major internet access, only a dial-up. There was no hybrid work. There was no, oh, you know what? It's the end of the day. I'll just work on it tonight because I need to go and eat dinner with my family and I'll just stay up tonight. That wasn't as much of an option because we didn't have the connectivity that we have. So what I'm saying is that we, at this point, in general, as a whole, as a society, have to decide to unplug. It's even more crucial for people like us who actually can keep working. I had a particular crunch about a month and a half ago, where I did an all nighter, which I have not done an all nighter in a very long time on purpose. But there were 4 or 5 different client things happening at the same time. And I felt better that I got it done. I was not planning on doing an all-nighter, but I pretty much did one. I think I fell asleep around 4 in the morning, maybe five, and slept for a couple hours, and then kept the day going with my kids. That's you could do that all the time when you're independent. If you're new to independent work, which again I was bigging up the uh, Institute for Independent Journalism having their conference. Again, the link is below. If you're getting new to that kind of work, the kind of work that I'm talking about, where you're doing a startup and you're in Silicon Valley, you're outside of Silicon Valley at this point. You're doing your first startup. You're starting your business and it's just starting to take off, and so you're starting to get a lot of work, and you got bills to pay. If you're a new parent or you have someone who's newly dependent on you, shout out to y'all that are um, such as Kim Moy. Shout out to you. I sent you a message earlier with the caregiver wisdom. You can check her out over on LinkedIn. She has a newsletter um, where you're actually supporting someone else who's going through their challenges, and suddenly your time is crunched up. That's kind of that period of time when you're going through those shifts where you really need to build these habits to have this rest for yourself. There's no one, and I've said this for years, I've said this in my books. Again, if you buy the Complete Bring Your Worth collection, I talk about it. There's no one that's going to pull me aside and say, "Hey, Damon, have you eaten dinner? Hey, you know what? You worked really hard today. Why don't your work, it seems like it's slipping a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and why don't you take the rest of the day?" Like no one's going to do that. It's not meant as a pity party because I love I love my career, and hopefully you love your career, starting to love your career yourself. My point is that we have a level of independence here, and that cuts both ways. I say this because with the holidays, it's possible to work right on through, even though the banks are closed and your friends and colleagues who have more traditional jobs might literally not be able to work. Some of them will still have to work, but most of them will not have to work. We have the option because our work is right here. Our work is on our computer. Our work is on our phone. Our work is on, in the artist shed that we have set up. We could be working the whole time. We could be trying to get ahead on things for the new year. I implore you to take that break. So use that systemic part to your advantage. Chances are your clients, remember, are not going to be calling you. If they are calling you, you can go ahead and let them know that. Be like, no, I'm not doing that. So you can automate how you communicate with folks when you're taking a break, whether it's in the system or outside of the system. So setting up those cues. A really simple way to do that is to treat it almost like you're going on vacation, where you can put your phone into vacation mode if it can be that hardcore as far as putting it into airplane mode. You could also turn your notifications off. You can let people know ahead of time, which I've already done. If you work with me, you've already gotten a message where it's like, I was like, oh, because there's literally a new client that that I might be working with over the next, in the upcoming days. And they just came in like yesterday. And I let them know, I'm like, hey, I'd love to chat with you. If we can chat over the next couple of days, that'd be great. Otherwise, Happy New Year to you. You know what I mean? But setting those boundaries without guilt and without shame. And truth be told, I talked about this in my today's newsletter at joindamon.me. Truth to be told, when we do that, we have the opportunity to actually empower and give strength to other people and allow them to do that thing without shame as well. If you're going to get into the systems, then you need some good systems. Let's talk about them. One of my favorites is called Calendly. You've probably heard me talk about it before. Calendly allows you to let this online calendar know, and it can sync with your calendar in your phone as well. Let them know when you're available. So essentially allows you to, I never thought about it like this, but lets you to set up office hours. In today's world, where it's in a world, but in today's world with hybrid you know, remote work and all that, that gets super messy. If you work with Slack at all, there's opportunities to say, in Slack, you can go ahead and say, I'm off hours, or, turn off the switch, I'm not available, so you don't get notifications. Excuse me. This is like a real world application um, of that simple thing. Excuse me. And so you go to Calendly, you can sync it with your calendar, your family's calendar, if you have a family, da da da. Go and get that going. And then once you do that, then if you have a new, excuse me, if you have a new client or someone new that wants to work with you, as I had recently, you can send them a link and say, hey, this is my calendar, this is my availability, pick a time. Two things happen with this. One is clear, and the other one is more unconscious. The first thing that happens is y'all don't have to go back and forth as far as when you're going to meet. These are the times that I'm available. Pick one. So it gets straight to the point. It's automated, so they can go ahead and click the link. They pick a time, and then that calendar meeting invitation is sent to both of your respective calendars. And then you just confirm it and say yes. Boom, you guys are meeting on the 21st or whatever, right? So that's the conscious part of it. The unconscious part of it, or the part that actually works really well as far as what I'm talking about right now, is that you have the opportunity to actually create a boundary with other people. So it's not just saying, oh, I'll meet at any time. When did you want to meet? Da da da. And you're not going with the back and forth. Instead, you're basically saying, this is when I'm available. I would like to do it this way, and this is the vibes, right? And I think it's so important to have that experience and to say, these are the boundaries to the work that I do. This is when I'm going to be available. And it's all good if it doesn't work for you. Maybe we can meet at a time in the upcoming year. I know sometimes we have the blurry boundaries because, particularly when we're independent, sometimes we don't know literally where our next check, and in that case, where our next meal is coming from. That's part of being independent. Yes, you have the security and you have the diversity, which is one of the reasons why I have so many things that I do. I like doing a lot of things, but part of it is that the diversity creates security. So if this particular thing happens to be going slow, or if there's a client that's running late on paying me, then I have this other money coming in. Yes, that creates some type of security. But the psychological muscle that's required to stay in that mindset can be taxing. And so you have a client that says, yes, this hasn't happened to me, thank God. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a client. But you can have that client that says, okay, well, the only time I can meet is on Christmas Eve. But I got this paycheck for you. And you're like, ah, right? Oh my God, what am I going to do? But we have these days, these times in the system off for a reason. Yes, it's for the holidays, but also it's to stop. Take advantage of that. I really like Calendly a lot because it gives the opportunity for us to not have to say no directly to a person, but to say, hey, this is when I'm available. And then it kind of outsources what that pressure. As I've gotten older and faced my parents, even when I was younger, I didn't have a big problem saying no. But for some of us, that's a big challenge. This is part of saying no. It's the opportunity to do that. I just threw the newsletter in there as well if you want to go a little bit deeper. It's a free newsletter I have every Wednesday. It's at joindamon.me. Today's is Humanity Needs You, and I talk about how to balance the efficiency necessary for us to get the rest that we need and so forth, along with those things we really want to invest our time into, which is really what we're talking about today. One of my favorite ways to get some of that time back and to carve out time to rest is Meet Edgar. Shout out to Laura and the other folks that are leading things over there. I love your work. Meet Edgar is really simple. Any social media posts, and I mean for nearly any platform, instead of putting it on directly on those platforms, let's say you're related to Facebook. Instead of putting it on Facebook, you put it into Meet Edgar. The whole post, any images you have with it, da, da, da. Then Meet Edgar will look at your different posts, maybe look at the patterns of when you post on Facebook and when the engagements are the best, and it'll recommend the best times for it. Or you can do fixed times and say, yeah, every 9 a.m., every Wednesday at 9 a.m., I want to do a post. You can randomize the posts, or you can say this specific post. You can have the post expire at a certain point. For instance, I was talking about the Independent Institute for Independent Journalists. You know, the conference is going to be in February. So maybe I want the link to expire February 1st because the conference is about to happen, right? And I don't want to post about the conference in March, stuff like that. What's great is that number one, you don't have to do the posting because you give Meet Edgar the permission to do the posting. So I'm not on a bunch of social media platforms, but if you do follow me on there, you'll see that I'll do a lot of posting. That's Meet Edgar. So shout out to them. I'm not sitting there on social media all day. It's like, no, they're posting it. Because a lot of stuff I do, such as this show, it's evergreen. So if you watch an episode from Bring It Worth from 2 years ago, we might be talking about slightly different things as far as with, we might not be talking about what's happening in Syria because the recent development happened literally over the past week. But all the other stuff, it's evergreen. So if you're doing evergreen content, evergreen videos in my case, evergreen articles in my case, etc., then this is a great opportunity to do that. What I love about it is that it'll actually randomize things as well. So there could be a video from 2021, around the time that the show started, that fits what you need right now. And you might see it on social media, but it might be episode 25, and we're episode 401 today. And I might have forgotten about the episode because I've already done 375 episodes. But then Meet Edgar will show up a post and say, hey, da da da. And you might be like, oh, what's this? And you click on it, and it's new to you, as we used to say in the newspaper business. It's like it might not be new, but it's new to you. Our main goal is to have it new to you. And of course, the beautiful part is that you don't have to spend your whole day on social media. Meet Edgar is going to be working all through the holidays. Shout out to Meet Edgar. It's going to be working all through the holidays. I don't need to do it. Thank you very much. I actually have an affiliate link here, so I think you'll get some type of discount if you do it through this link. So if you're going to do it, do it through this link. Check it out and see what's happening. My Another recommendation I have is Dropbox. Shout out to Drew Houston. Um, it if you're not familiar with it, it basically backs up all your material. There's a couple major books that I've done in my career where I was working on the manuscript and it was equivalent of a dog ate my homework and that manuscript was gone. And I might have been able to recover some old version or whatever, but those words disappeared. Dropbox is cool because it'll actually, we call it syncing nowadays. It will sync across different computers, which were not available. That's how far back it was when this sync happened. We just had one copy of a file. And if you're wise enough, you duplicate it at the end of the day, just have a duplicate somewhere on some, it wasn't even flash drives or whatever was happening hot at the time. This allows you to sync with that. I recommend this because you can rest if you have Dropbox backing up your stuff. If you're collaborating with other people, then they can have access to parts of the Dropbox. And so you're not the only one working on it. That means when you're taking a break, when you're resting, and one of your colleagues or whomever you're working with needs a copy of stuff, they can get it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the bottleneck with it. That means when you're on vacation or you're resting, or even if you're meditating in the corner, which I've done all three recently, you have an opportunity to do that. It's super affordable considering how powerful it is, and it's definitely saved my behind quite a few times. And the homie, I think I have the book here. I do. I read the book so often, it's all over the place. I've read it. I've read it to my kids as bedtime stories. I'm not kidding. They've fallen asleep to this book. It makes me proud as a parent. I'm like, yes, this is what you need to fall asleep to. Forget the lullabies. Rest is Resistance by Dr. Trisha Hersey. Fantastic, fantastic book. I didn't get into this book until this year. It's been out for a few years, It's probably my favorite book of the year. Next to, there's another book about self-compassion. That's literally the name of the book. And I think it's by Dr. Litt. It's over here. Maybe I'll do an episode at the beginning of the year talking about my favorite books of the past year. So good. You see, it's dog-eared to hell. Ridiculously, ridiculously good. Her argument, if I can sum it up, hopefully gracefully, is this: our ability to actually be our best selves is tied into our ability to actually rest. Unfortunately, we've been conditioned and trained to believe that we're more like robots, that we're cogs in a machine, and that is our purpose. The secret is, which is why I keep talking about this book, is that if we actually allowed ourselves to rest, number one, we'd see how many jacked up things are happening within our system. Because when you're exhausted, you're compliant. So that's one. The second thing is that we have the opportunity to make our world more equitable because the folks in power want us to be exhausted for reason number one. And so just our ability to have assembly, to think clearly, to think strategically, to try to get not just hustle for another day, but to think long term, that is intimately connected to our ability to rest. And as she talks about, it's not you going on a vacation for a month. It doesn't have to be a sabbatical. It could be taking a nap. It could be resting your eyes. It could be doing a sun bath or a sound bath or a nature bath. There's so many different baths nowadays. We're just walking under some trees. If you're living in Gotham City, shout out to my folks over on the East Coast in New York, go to Central Park and just sit there. That is rest. We are not meant to do all the time. I can't recommend this book more. Heavy concepts in there. Some of the stuff even goes back to, whew, I'll just leave it at heavy stuff. It's not as simple as you feeling like you can't stop. That's actually by design. Shout out to Dr. Hersey. Love your book. I believe she has a new book that came out too. I have not read it yet because obviously I'm still passionately in love with this one. I'll probably read this one a second time while I'm resting over the next couple of weeks. You're watching Bring Your Worth to TV, whatever it's called. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. My name is Damon Brown. I'm entrepreneurial coach to side hustlers, solopreneurs, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneurs like yourself. Bring Your Worth TV most Wednesdays, but if you're going to catch me live, it's going to be on a Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You subscribe for free. Shout out to y'all on Twitch. Feel free to subscribe and follow me on there. And my newest book is the complete Bring Your Worth collection, available wherever fine books are sold. You can also listen to the audiobook right now here at bringyourworth.tv and check it out. And of course, there's the new channel on Twitch. So for y'all, what are good ways that you can use the current systems you're in to rest? We talk about there being oppressive systems and us having to grind it out and all that. In what ways are you able to flip the script? And when you actually do have a break, like the holidays coming up, are you taking that break? What provisions can you make to actually take that break? I didn't mean to rhyme, but here we are. Feel free to jump in the comments on Twitch, LinkedIn, or any of the platforms. I appreciate y'all. I'm in a silly mood. Must be that holiday spirit. Must be that eggnog. All right. The next step is if you're going to go ahead and rest well in this upcoming year, you have to plan strategically. You can't just throw it together. Throwing it together isn't going to make it. Here's the thing. No one's going to tell you to take a break. I'm telling you to take a break, but I'm probably a rarity. If you're an independent worker like myself, if you're doing stuff in a hybrid capacity or working from home remotely, if you're a parent or you have someone that's dependent on you, they might care the heck out of you, but rarely are they going to tell you that you need to stop, unless you're showing some serious signs that might be affecting their lives. I love my kids to death, but rarely are they like, "Hey, Dad, you should go take a nap." They're not going to do that because they got their own stuff, and they're dependent on me. So things need to keep going in some fashion. That means that I and I alone am responsible for this, taking care of my family, taking care of my home, taking care of my businesses. I have a few businesses. If that's the case, then if I'm going to rest, I need to have some type of strategy. I can't just think that rest is going to magically happen. It's not. That's what I'm here to tell you. Rest will not magically happen, particularly if you're an adult and you're adulting. It's not going to magically happen. What will keep happening are bills, right? Death and taxes. Shout to Marvin Gaye. They will keep going. So it's up to you, up to you to plan in a way so that you can take the rest that you need. That gets into strategy. You need to have a strategy. Luckily, as we're talking right now, and if you're watching the replay, it might still apply. We're at the beginning of a new year. You can start fresh. That means you got January to March, et cetera, et cetera. You got all these quarters ahead of you. Number one, start planning your quarters now. Financially and otherwise, I already have my first quarter planned for next year. That helps. That's like okay, if things get busy, if things get slow, the world goes upside down. All right, well, I got these contracts signed. I have these finances going on. Okay, I'm good for well into the new year. That's that's relief, but that's also strategic. I set up these projects, these things, other things, so that I would be in good shape going to 2025. In this case, if you're watching in the future, apply whatever year it applies to for you. That allows me to rest. If I did not think that 2025 was beginning from a secure footing, how am I going to take a nap? How am I going to be at Christmas Eve dinner and then not thinking about how am I going to get through this year? Like that's not even as far as me. If you just joined the program, I'm on Twitch now. So it's twitch.tv/Brown Damon. Me doing moves like that, that's creating a potential, even another financial future that allows me to rest in the future. But it only requires me getting connected to a new platform, not me starting something from scratch. That is a strategic move. You see some of my episodes on Spotify right now as of last month. That's a strategic move. Even though I'm just creating these episodes, obviously one at a time, but they're on multiple platforms. I've become more agnostic, not just having it on one or two platforms. My point is this: if you're going into 2025 and you do not have a business plan as well as a plan for a break, then you can't assume that either one of those things are going to succeed. I'm assuming you're going in 2025 with some type of business plan, particularly if you're independent, an idea of what clients you're going to work with or what projects you're going to launch. This would be the time to kind of think about it strategically. You don't need to work per se during this holiday season, the last couple weeks of the year, but you need to have some type of strategy. That will be time well spent, not just working. That might be time well spent depending on your situation and where you're at, but actually spending time with strategy. I was thinking about actually working a little bit in the next couple of weeks, and there is a couple of things I need to get done that are relatively small or less high stakes. Fine, I spent an hour doing it, not a big deal. But I'm like, what I really need to do is come up with a strategy. That's when I started looking into Twitch and talking to some of my mentors in the podcast that's video space. You know who you are. I appreciate you. And being like, oh, this is a good strategy. that simple thing as far as I should get involved with Twitch right now, this feels like a good time to do so. That required me slowing down and not saying I just need to do more work. That's strategic. Therefore, that's going to perhaps give me more financial freedom, which will allow me to rest more in the upcoming year. Do you see how that works? You have to have some type of strategy. So your business strategy becomes your rest strategy. Because if you're independent, those two things are intertwined. They have to be. As we say in the independent game, often if you don't work, then you don't eat. I don't, again, I don't have a, I can't just go in my cubicle or the equivalent of it or my office, close the door, and then just get through the day and then get a paycheck every 2 weeks. I can't do that. No shade if you're doing that, but it's literally not an option for me. For a lot of y'all watching, which is probably why you're watching, it's not an option for y'all either. So we have to act accordingly. We also don't have set vacation times, and often our vacations are based on what the world is doing. Where, as in, you can't work right now because your clients aren't available because they're on holiday, as you should be. Again, as we talked about earlier in the episode, you folding into whatever vibe is happening in the greater world. It's my long way of saying that if you don't organize your year right now, as far as how you're going to act accordingly within your business, then there's no way you're going to be able to bake in the rest that you feel like you might need. They're one and the same. Because if you're running your own business or independent, you are the manager. You can't ask for time off. You have to create time off. You can't go to HR and say, I need this. No, you can't. There is no HR. So you're going to have to work from that perspective. One of the things that helps me a lot is figuring out what the priorities of the upcoming year are going to be. And then that allows me to carve out what my strategy is and therefore allow to do this, such and such. One of my priorities is getting more rest. This was so much transition this year. If you're a longtime viewer, you know this is a new office, so I'm at a new place. Um, my eldest just started middle school, so now suddenly we're starting to go into teenage land, which I've never experienced, and neither has my co-parenting partner. You know, I'm getting older, so it's not a milestone year, but it's one of those years where I'm like, oh man, I actually am getting older. Holy crap! This wheel of time only turns one way. You know what I'm saying? Just so much transition, so many changes. With that in mind, I have to say, okay, with all this upheaval and changing, of course, all the stuff happening in the world, and even here in America recently, it's like, well, what are my priorities? What's important to me? Well, one of those things is rest. I've been through so much transition this year. I've had a lot of episodes about transition, so hopefully I've been able to take you guys with me. Feel free to check out the whole catalog at you can go to bringyourworth.tv and you'll see the whole catalog. Lots of live shows as well as some edited shows. Talk about change, transition, creating consistency and stability, learning self-love and self-compassion and all that stuff. I've tried to cover all that stuff for you guys as I was going through it myself. So rest is a high priority for that. So whatever, sorry for kicking the camera. My camera's got a mind of its own today. But doing all those different things, I know what I'm going to go into in the upcoming year. And I'm all like, all right, well, rest has to be one of those priorities. Another priority is reaching out at other places, which also will enable me to rest, as well as bringing even more financial stability, as well as supporting the sponsors. Shout out to Short Form for sponsoring this episode, allowing my sponsors to connect with more people too. Like all that stuff is connected. What are the three priorities that you want to put into this upcoming year? And then work backwards from there. Yeah, there's a few things I can think of that won't even get into them. It's not that they're private or anything, but they don't apply to my life anymore as far as the type of work I want to do. Where there's certain opportunities where I would have killed for them a few years ago. And I'm like, I'm not really in that phase anymore. Or, yeah, I'd rather prioritize this. There might be certain things opportunities that pop up, hopefully for you. And you have to put it on that scale and figure out if they work for you and if they are compatible with the type of life that you want to live. Again, I talk about that in today's newsletter at joindavid.me. humanity needs you, you'll understand it a little bit more. It's not a slam on AI, I promise. In fact, there's an AI advertisement in there. Nothing wrong with AI, but more like what kind of experience do we want to have, and how do we want to prioritize things in our life. When it comes to figuring out our priorities and streamlining things, again, systems are a big part of it. One of my favorite things that came up, I just discovered them this year. It's called Shoebox. Back in the day, you'd have your Nikes if you're lucky, or you had your LA gear, whatever was hot, and they would come in a shoebox. They still do, but it's not as popular. It's not as classic as the as the shoeboxes used to be, right? Shoebox is also, once you got your shoes, particularly if you're old school. I never went through this, but more of the previous generation. That's where you keep your receipts. So you have a shoebox, you keep your change, extra money, keep your receipts. If you're like my late grandmother, rest in peace, you might have kept it under the bed, slid it under there. Folks, there's folks that survived the Great Depression. They weren't trying to put their money in the bank, but you have your stack of money, or you got whatever in your shoebox. That's where this term comes from, as far as something being shoeboxed. That's exactly what this platform does. It will organize the receipts and other things that you have throughout the year. If you're independent, you're probably going through what I'm going through, where it's like, okay, the year's going to end in exactly 2 weeks. We got 14 days. And then I'm going to start getting all the tax information from all the different clients that I work with, whether it's agents or an independent article over here, whatever. Getting all that, I need to compile that. I need to get my receipts, which I have some receipts right out of you here that I need to organize. One of the things I might need to do during vacation. That's a good that's a good use of my time, and it can be relaxing too if you're a nerd. If you're a nerd like me, I need to organize all that stuff. Shoebox will help you organize all that. The reason why I say that is that when the year ends, you start getting all the tax information here. It's here in the United States and probably Canada, all the tax information. And then you're working with your tax preparer, you're working with QuickBooks, which I'll talk about in a second. You're working with somebody, or if you're brave, you're sending your stuff in by yourself. This will help you organize that so it's not a nightmare. And yeah, let's cut straight to the chase. QuickBooks, if you are a subscriber of the newsletter at joindamon.me, again, it's free. I'm a fan of QuickBooks way back to when I was a very, very broke freelancer. I don't think I could afford to do the H&R Block or whatever was hot at the time. And yes, I could just do my stuff on my own. I'm a DIY person myself. As you can tell, I got my own TV show, so doing my own taxes wasn't ever a big deal. QuickBooks is a great guide from that. Number one, you can actually put in your taxes through it, which was very relatively novel at the time when I used it back in the day, but now it's even more streamlined. They actually have certified tax agents that can help you with that. It's also a way where it can connect to your bank accounts, and then it becomes almost like your profit and loss sheet. So I looked forward to looking at my QuickBooks and then figuring out if I made a profit that year or not, which sometimes it was not a profitable year to my shock, but having everything organized. And finally, they have a new system where actually using AI to recommend where you can cut back on things and things like that, almost like having your own personal financial assistant. Be sure and check them out and see what's happening over there. I think they have a sale still going on. Again, if you're a subscriber at joindamon.me, you might have caught their Black Friday sale. I think they still have a sale that's happening through the end of the year, so be sure to check them out. And one of my favorite books on systems and figuring out what your priorities are and to be strategic, it's the book Upstream by Dan Heath. I love this book. Upstream basically means that the best systems fix things before they can break. And so you might have interacted with people or organizations that seem like they can handle any problem, because a problem comes up and they they get it together, they fight a crisis, they'll get it, they'll get it done, and they'll marshal, and you'll be like, wow, that's an amazing organization, or wow, that's an amazing leader. Dan's actually making the opposite argument, which I agree with, is that the amazing leaders and the amazing organizations and the amazing people, if we want to get individual, they already have a strategy in place so that it doesn't become a crisis. But they're the ones that usually don't get the credit for it. They're not admired, right? We admire the folks that run into the building that's on fire. We admire the folks that get some curveball that could have happened, but they didn't think it was going to happen, and they're able to rise to the top, rise strong, as Brene Brown would say. But the real genius is when people have very, and organizations have very little trouble at all. But that's because they planned in such a way so that they wouldn't have to be in a crisis in the first place. That's what upstream means. If you think about it like a river, downstream means it's here, you got to deal with it. Upstream means let's fix it up there so that it's not even an issue and it never gets downstream. Best way I can to succinctly say it, I have a couple episodes about the book Upstream. You can just do a search at bringyourworth.tv. I've talked about it in quite a few live episodes. Just get the book. I think it's also available on short form, so be sure and check it out there. So those are ways that you can plan strategically for your upcoming year. What do you plan on doing in this upcoming year to strategically plan for, number one, to hit your business goals, but number two, to hit your personal and rest goals? What are you guys doing? Feel free to jump in the comments. Let me know what's happening. I'd love to hear it and how I might be able to help. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free and get the complete Bring Your Worth collection wherever fine books are sold, or you listen to the audiobook right now after we're done talking at the link right there. And again, I'd love to hear you guys' take on how you're planning strategically for the upcoming year. I know I'll be spending some of the time during vacation doing the very thing of that. Create reverse accountability. That's one way you can actually build in rest in the upcoming year. What do you mean by reverse accountability? We often talk about accountability as far as saying, oh, this work needs to get done. You didn't get it done, or you need to get this done. It's in a sense of imposing someone's will or putting someone's feet to the fire and saying, you need to do this. Reverse accountability, in my opinion, is basically saying, you actually don't need to do that. You're carrying this burden. You don't have to. Why are you working till 9 p.m.? The client's not even in the office. They need it first thing in the morning. Why are you working on Christmas? Are you trying to get ahead of things and hustle? Is anyone going to respond to whatever you're working on if you're sending in an email? No, they're probably going to take most of the week off. In our best situations, we're able to have people around us. In our best situations, we're able to have people around us that will tell us to stop our perfectionism, to stop our anxious working, to stop scrolling. We have this reverse accountability to say you don't have to be accountable for that. You can stop. There's always that moment, you might have experienced that, when you're really, really tired, but you want to watch this show or you want to finish this book. And it's worth the irony of losing sleep over reading the book Rest is Resistance. But you want to finish that book. And then you have this moment where you realize you you have to read this passage 5 times because you can't understand the words and it's in your language. Or you have to rewind the show you're streaming because you realize you missed 5 minutes of dialogue because you're so exhausted. Work is the exact same way. So if your axe isn't sharp enough, excuse me, if you're exhausted but you're pushing through, if you figured your rest later, you're going to have diminished returns. So even if you say, I'm going to get ahead of the game for this upcoming year, I'm going to work straight through this vacation. That's up to you. I've done it before. No judgment from me. Likely though, depending on what you got going on and where you're at and what your resources are as far as energy and age and whatever, you're going to have diminished returns. Worst of all, when you actually do get back into the grind and everyone's back at work on January 6th or whatever day it is, January 4th, once that happens, you're going to be exhausted and then your performance is going to be poor then. That might be end up being worse than you just taking a couple of days off that you obviously sorely need. If we don't have anyone on our coattails pulling at our coattails, not on our coattails, that would be weird. You'd fall over. But pulling on our coattails, saying, "Yo, you seem like you need to stop." Then we're just kind of on our own. Again, as I was talking about with the independent Institute for Independent Journalists, again, the link is below for the conference. As I was talking about with my own work, if you're doing stuff on your own, then it's even twice as important to have that level of reverse accountability. Someone's going to say, "Hey, Damon, you've done enough. Hey, yo, you when are you going to take a break? Hey, I know you want to get this book done, this manuscript done. I know you want to finish editing this video. I know you want to do this for this client so you'll be ready in the upcoming year. But can you just take the afternoon off?" That's the type of pushback that we need, particularly when we're independent, because, you know, as as much as we go independent and don't have the best view of having a boss, right? That's one of the reasons why we go independent. They're not all bad. And a good boss will pull you aside and be like, "Hey, Johnson, go home for the day. I know you've been through a lot. Just go home. I'll have someone else pick it up, or we'll just do it in the morning. It'll be fine. Just take the afternoon." We we don't have anybody like that. Yeah. I don't mean to make it sound sad. You know, we have families, we have people that would care about us. But as far as our work, we're in this arena alone. That's what the independent part means. That's what makes it different. So for independent, it's not just we have to be self-motivated and we can do whatever the hell we want. It's also that we have to create our own boundaries and limitations and guardrails to make sure that we stay healthy and on top of things, that our mental health is good, that our bodies are able to rest. You hear my allergies going. Everyone has allergies here in Las Vegas. And so even my body's saying, "Yo," as you hear my voice, my body's saying, "Yo, you want to wrap up this program today because we're about to go into rest mode. You need to go hang out with your family after this." There's signals that we have that when we're independent, we can power through those signals and not hear them. We need to have other people that are giving reverse accountability to say, "Yo, you don't have to do that right now. You should stop. You should rest." Hopefully you're building up people or already have people around you who care about you enough to be like, particularly other independents, we got to take care of each other. That's such a key part of it. Did an episode way back when, episode 100. You're watching and hanging out with episode 401 right now. So a long time ago, I want to say it was early 2021, maybe summer 2021. Anyway, discover the secret to achieving success with a personal board. I talk about my own board of directors. You know who you are. I appreciate and love y'all. Handful of folks, not a bunch of people, but a handful of folks in that inner circle that personally and professionally be like, "Yo, you said you wanted this, but you're doing this. Hey, you seem really stressed out. Maybe you should take that afternoon." Just the stuff I was talking about and we were talking about earlier. You got to build it up yourself. I've been very fortunate and very strategic as far as building up the board of directors. There's some people that did not stay in that board seat, and there's some new people that come in. It's not a static thing. And sometimes you have a board of directors, someone on the board who fit one era of your life, and then later on you're like, oh, we don't really understand each other that well. When I started doing the show again 4 years ago, it's like I didn't know what I was doing. I never had a show before. I've done other people's shows, I've hosted shows and done stuff behind the scenes and stuff, but I was like, I don't know. So then there are people on my board of directors who actually had done shows. And then we talk about burnout, because it's a real thing with the videos, talking about burnout, getting the right microphone, stuff like that, but also talking about how to balance this new venture. And thankfully, I had them because here I am 4 years later and still loving the process. Without them, it would have been a harder process. Anyway, this video right here from a few years ago talks about how to develop your own board of directors. If you're not sure where to start, one cool thing that I got into, particularly when the pandemic hit pretty hard a couple of years ago, was Lunch Club. Shout out to Lunch Club. Free service where you'll talk about your interests, da da da. And then usually on Monday morning, they'll send an email and say, hey, you want to meet somebody new this week? And if you're like, yeah, sure. It's like, okay, what times are available? Kind of like Calendly. What times are available? Oh, I can meet somebody on Wednesday morning. All right, bet. And then it'll go away and be like, okay, you're meeting Jonathan on Wednesday morning at 10 p.m. It's like, oh, okay. And again, you put in your interests, your dislikes, all that stuff, and they pair you with someone who might be a good friend or a good colleague. I used it quite a bit, I want to say in 2022. I've talked about it on the show before. Um, I've met people through there that are doing amazing things in business. I met people in there where it was equivalent of me, somebody at a party. And we just had a good conversation. It's like, hey, it was good meeting you. Take care of yourself. I never talked to them again. And there's some people that I'm still connected to through social media or even had other meetings with outside of Lunch Club. Wonderful variety of folks in there. I'm sure it's a lot bigger. I haven't been on there in a few months, but I'm sure it's a lot bigger than it was when I got on there when it first started or started to become a little bit popular in 2022. Be sure and check it out. If you're not sure where to start, you're all like, Damon, how do I get? Because you might find people that would fit into your board of directors there. And a lot of stuff that we talked about today, I addressed in the free newsletter. It's free every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. It's delivered to you. Today's newsletter is over at joindamon.me. You can join it for free. And today's newsletter is Humanity Needs You, and balancing the humanity and the time and the effort it takes to connect with other people with the efficiency of getting through your to-do list. A really important tension that's kind of that secret behind why we have a hard time resting and what things are really worth our time. Yeah, I got a few family things going on tonight. Resting would be lovely, but my family is really important. And that's in the case of actually resting later. I can rest later. Me pushing out another video or doing this, that, mm, spending an hour on social media replying to things. What is really worth our time? And with everything going on in the world, in America, and all that, the reason why I did this episode is because I think our time is going to become a lot more precious because there's going to be clowns dancing over here, and I don't mean crumping. Clowns dancing over here. It's going to be a conflict or whatever term you want to use happening over here. There will be folks that don't know how to process their anxiety about all the stuff that's happening in the world, who might need therapy, might need to go meditate somewhere, but don't know where to start, not sure how to process their generational trauma. They're doing something over here. And it's us doing, or you doing, your independent work trying to make an impact on the world. If you're not grounded in a certain way, if you're not getting your rest, your mental rest, your physical rest, your spiritual rest, if you're not doing that, you might not make it. I don't mean in a fatal way. I mean, you might not be making that impact that you should be making. I want you to make it. So get strategic. Carve out that rest. How are you going to take care of yourself in this upcoming year? Write it down. Figure it out. Hopefully, the tools we talked about today will help with that. If you happen to be watching one of the replay clips or whatever, then the whole episodes will also be available at Bringingworth TV and now at Twitch.tv. But the live streaming is kind of what's popping the most over at Twitch.tv. Listen, I appreciate y'all. Hope you have a wonderful holiday. Oh, and in the comments, even if I catch it on the replay, how are you allowing other people to remind you when you're doing too much? And when other people tell you you're doing too much, how often do you listen? You can have the best board of directors in the world, but if you don't listen to them, it doesn't matter. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, here to help you as a side hustle, solopreneur, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneur. And this is Bring Your Worth TV. You can catch me live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. I appreciate y'all. Um, yeah, 4 years. I think it's going to be the last live of the year, so I hope you have a nice, restful break. I'm definitely going to be working on mine and work on that strategy for the upcoming year so that you don't wear yourself down and you're able to show up for people as your best self, as your full self, as much as possible. Because you can't have one without the other. Much love. Remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.